So, did you guys enjoy Remnants from the Ashes? Did you guys enjoy Surge? Did you guys enjoy Dead Space 3? If so, then the Callisto Protocol might be for you. But if you hated any of those games, you might want to start looking away. This is the Callisto Protocol. And before we get into it, there's going to be spoilers. So if you just want to know what my opinions are and the final rating that I give this game, skip to the end. My editor will put a timer there for you. He'll give you some time to do so. So, just do that. Because I'm going to be talking about story, the gameplay, and the characters. Alright, so let's start off with the story. And instantly, the story grips you. You're on some planet. It doesn't tell you. You could even be on Earth. And there's just people lying dead. They look infected. They look diseased. They look rotten. And there's just this Asian woman walking through the streets. And she's just going over. And something jump scares her. Of course, because, classic Glenn Schofield there. And she finally sees something on the ground. And it's just a weird color-coded hex box. It's pretty obvious what it is. It's something that's blocked out. And we don't know why. And it has to be replaced. So we keep going, it plays music, and then it cuts. And then it tells us that she was a part of a terrorist group that attacked this place called Europa. Which, later on, we find out was a planet, and this was a colony on the planet. And we are shuttle runners going from Callisto that have gone to Europa before this attack. We've take a bunch of this medicine from, emphasis on from, a prison, and take it to different places like Earth, Europa, and a few other Earth colonies. And it's really kind of mind-boggling of why would we even do that in the first place, but they really just glance over it. Like, that's not suspicious at all. So we keep going through, and we're having a lot of back and forth. And Jacob's our main character, and we have Thomas, or Max, or whatever his name is. And eventually, we hear that our hull has been breached, and we have to go check it out. So we go check it out, and the game starts off amazing. We already know that we're in our element. It's classic Dead Space. We got the third person over the shoulder, that walk, that very humble, slow walk. You're a little bit frightened, but like you're confident. And you're looking, and you're going through your storage, and you're like, okay. Here's something that says warning on it. And I don't know if it's just me, but the shit looks military, right? It doesn't seem like it's medicine. And then eventually you open up later in the game, you find out, oh yeah, it's just medicine, no problem. And then even further on, you find out, oh yeah, no, we were smuggling larva vermin bullshit that we found from a dead alien that we harvested over like 80 years ago that were still alive, mind you, still alive. And we were just putting them in the bottom of these things so that we could tell our people on other planets, hey, go stab these into people, see what the fuck happened. Oh, hi, Captain. Obviously, we saw what happened, but I digress. Moving on from where we are now, we keep looking for this hull breach, and we find out that this group, this quote-unquote terrorist group called the Outer Way, has boarded our ship, and they're trying to stop us from doing more deliveries because they've been checking the routes and checking which ships have been taking these medicines where, and yours just happened to be the last one that visited Europa before this outbreak happened, so of course they blame you. Which, again, they rightfully should have, but you get a double fake out, which I fucking hate. That double fake out was stupid, and I don't care what anybody says. The fact that it was led to believe that, oh yeah, no, it was just medicine, and then later on we find out, oh no, they were storing it under the medicine, fucking stupid. I get having, like, fake switches or anything like that, or, like, I would have rather them have believed and stated that inside the medicine that we were delivering had the larva, rather than just, oh, underneath the medicine are 5 containers of larva. Really? 5 containers wiped out an entire human colony that would probably have more than 150 people. 5 larvae. Alright, sure. Later, we find out You know, they're coming after us. We blast the door open. She, which we find out was the Asian lady from the start, her name's Danny, blows out her window, tries to kill us all. Tries to kill herself. Somehow she survives after we crash. And our boy Thomas, or Max, or whatever the hell his name is, doesn't survive. So we get haunted by his face. We get thrown in prison for no good reason. She also gets thrown in prison. More believable because she's a quote-unquote terrorist. And then we wake up where we actually can start playing the game. So we wake up, prison's a mess. There's riots, or at least that's what we're led to believe happening. The robots that look like they're from Chappie are broken. And they look mangled as fuck. And then you just keep going. You find this guy, his name is Elias. He looks like the guy from The Office. But it's not the guy from The Office, as far as I know. He just kind of looks like the guy from The Office. And he gives us a shiv. It's made of a wrench. We instantly bond with this guy because, honestly, who the fuck else are we going to actually trust? So he tells us what we need to do because he's omniscient as fuck. He knows everything that's going on. He knows everything that's going to happen. And he will guide us through most of the game until he dies. And then Danny will take over as our new omniscient sentient person who just happens to know everything. Because one thing that they didn't do for this game that they should have, which was 10 times better in Dead Space, was when I picked up a text log or an audio log, that shit would automatically play. And I'd be able to move and walk around while listening to it. They don't do that in this game. You have to sit there and read or listen to it, right? And the game gives this overwhelming urge of, like, oh, I need to keep moving. I need to be constantly doing something because they're skittering in the walls. There's a bunch of movement. Something's going to attack me, and I'm going to instantly die because of it. That never happens. Anytime that you find an audio or a text log, nothing will happen to you. So you can just sit there and listen to it, but the game doesn't give you that option. It doesn't physically feel like you have that option, which is poorly done. So as you start moving through the rest of the prison, your boy tells you, oh yeah, you need to go through waste management so that way we can progress on. So you have to sneak up through the guard tower to go to waste management. Cool. So you finally meet the fuckhead who arrested you on the warden's orders because the warden's just a dickhead. And he's all like, oh, I'm so much better than you. What's so special about you? Blah, 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 blah. And he starts using his grip gauntlet. And this grip gauntlet, most broken thing in the entire game. All right. The only thing that made the game fun was the grip gauntlet. By far, hands down, was the best invention in a Dead Space sequel, spiritual successor, whatever the hell you want to call this. I call this Dead Space 3 Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, because that's realistically what it was. So, we progress through, and he dies, gets thrown out the window, gets yeeted, doesn't give a shit. We already know he's coming back because he was so much of an asshole. He has already been played up already, you know. Semi-main character, has a name. Already know he's coming back, or he's going to be a part of the story. So we get through, we start going to waste management. Elias just tells us to follow the red pipe, you know, do this, do that. And then we get introduced to a new enemy. And this new enemy is invisible. But obviously, because we're in waste management, we're, you know, up to our waist in shit, quite literally. You can see the shit waiting in the water as it runs through, skitters through, blah, blah, blah. And even when they grab you, they aren't scary. Like, they slowly phase in like they're like a fucking shitty 80s Predator. And then you just button mash to get them off, and then you just shoot them a couple times and they fall over dead. I had tougher times with the enemies that could spit larvae at me than 90% of the other enemies in the game, except for the clickers. And the clickers were bullshit enemies. I don't care what anybody says, those were bullshit enemies. As we progress through waste management, we learn about tentacle monsters that are inside like the rest of the characters in the game now. And if you don't shoot the tentacles, they mutate and they become a tougher enemy. I can't tell you how many times that I just went through the entire game melee until a tentacle came out. Then I just shot it and kept meleeing because this game was just melee focused the entire time. It didn't have anything special to it other than just the grip gauntlet and melee. Other than that, it's just a carbon copy of Dead Space 3. So we get through waste management, and then Elias is like, oh, yeah, by the way, to get to the tram, you have to go through the hydroponics, or they call it the oxygen dome. It's hydroponics. It's literally Dead Space 3. So as you're going through hydroponics, you have to do a bunch of stuff. You get the key card, and then a bunch of the other invisible enemies are just hiding in the fucking trees. You think it's going to be a different enemy type. Nah, you're fine. Just fuck it. And you finally get to the tram, and then you, of course, do one of your first, or second fall through, and you have to continue on your own. Then you get yeeted out of a fucking airlock by Captain Fuckface, and your mask breaks, you fix yours, but, Elias ain't so lucky, so Elias dies, and then Danny's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna cut his fucking hollow neck thing out, his core upgrade, his little bicycle reflector, and we're good to go. And your character seems so upset by this, but, canonically, as you're going through the game, you see this dude cutting out other people's cores, and it's just like, oh yes, perfect, I now have audio logs of these people. So it doesn't make sense to have that. And then she is so untrustworthy of you until, we get to your ship that she sees, oh, maybe I should have trusted you. Because all you have in here that you were carrying with a giant warning label on it was just medicine. Clearly nothing sinister looking from these nuclear bomb-looking cases. Oh, okay, we're gonna just continue on. I'll call that ship down for you. So you finally progress, you finally get to the ship. And then the warden's like, oh yeah, these holograms you've been seeing? No, these are actually me projecting myself to you. These aren't pre-audio recordings. No. These are me personally fucking with you. So, let me call it my anti-air gun, which, again, makes sense because it's a prison. But just the fact he just so readily has one available, he's just like, and whoop, and you're gone. So then you fall into the underground and you're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll be fine. I'll just keep going. We'll have to go down to get up. Sometimes that happens. I understand that. That happens in real life too. Sometimes you have to go down to get up. But again, she walks over a flimsy bar, you fall in. Cool. Then you're down there and you're like, oh, where the fuck are we? She eventually finds you and she's like, oh yeah, we're underneath the prison. This is where the old colony used to be. Okay, Dead Space 3. As you go through this old colony, you realize, oh, there's all these enemies that have been here before. These clickers, they're the original adaptations of these monster types. And you just keep pressing on. And then eventually, you come across ways to go up. And you're like, okay, we have to go across the colony to get up. You fall down. Okay, I have to get back up. I'll take a mining cart across. Can't take the mining cart across. Okay, then I'll take the mining drill across. So you take the mining drill across, and you finally come across your first actual boss in the game. And let me tell you, aside from a couple other parts in the game, this is the most artificial bullshit difficulty possible that you could make. You have a tiny, tiny little area. You're given a bunch of resources. And the entire game has been teaching you the entire time, melee is the key. So you try and melee, he one-taps you. I was playing on medium difficulty. Full fucking health bar. One-tap me with a hit. You have to play perfectly. Perfectly or you die. And the game has a permadeath mechanic. If you choose to put that on. Imagine that you played this game going through, you put 6 hours in already. Six hours out of an 8-hour game. And you come across this guy, one-taps you. I'd be pissed as fuck. And not only that, after this guy, you fight him 2 more fucking times within the next 2 hours. Make it an hour and a half because I probably spent a half hour on the final boss, who is, again, Captain Fuckface, which you have to fight Captain Fuckface a time before that where he's seen as unstoppable. And you have to get your ass saved down in the fucking cave. And then eventually you fight him again, and then he mutates, and then you have to fight that mutation again. I can't make this shit up. The game loops you from having to leave the station to going back into Black Iron to just meet up with Captain Fuckface and the doctor that had 5 seconds of interaction with you before you have to go fight the warden. And the warden's like, nah, bro, I'm not even gonna fight you. I'm gonna let you do, your shit with this dude. And the entire time this is going on, they're basically saying Sir Victorious, which honestly just reminds me of the scene in Hot Fuzz of Simon Pegg, where he approaches the cult and all they're just saying is the greater good after everything. That's exactly what that reminds me of. It's so mind-boggling how this game was supposed to be a horror survival game, and the entire time I'm just seeing like references to The Office and other bullshit fucking pop culture media. Oh my god. So after we finally kill him, we're like, okay, we're gonna go take the escape pods, but I'm gonna kill the warden first. Turns out the warden's been a hologram the entire time. He's probably not even in a part of the prison. He's not, you know, Johnny Depping it out here, you know, with time aboard the Dutchman. He's not part of the ship, part of the crew, you know, bullshit. And I know I said that wrong, but that's how I memorized it. I know it's part of the crew, part of the ship, but I digress. So you go to the escape pods and you're just like, oh man, your memories of like what you've done to this woman, Danny, just comes flooding through, and you're just like, I'm a piece of shit. And so for some reason you're like, all right, I'm gonna take her, shove her in the pod, and we're good to go. Apparently the inside of the pods don't have ways to get out. So he's just like tapping all her coordinates in and then just jettisons her into space while this prison starts exploding. And then you get credits. And then at the end of the credits, you're like, oh, by the way, I'm the doctor. I'm still here. I didn't leave Black Iron, but there's a way for you to leave if you so wish. And then it cuts. And it's just like, okay, so this is set up for the DLC that's coming later in the year, or it's set up for Callisto Protocol 2, which I don't want to see. So our characters that we have are Jacob. He's the most generic piece of shit ever. He just goes with the flow. He's got a mouth on him, which is cool. That's probably pretty typical of something like this. And he's just in it for the paycheck. He's basically Han Solo. And then you got Thomas, or Max. And you don't get to learn much about him, but he's kind of like, oh man, I'm 2 days out from retirement type. And then of course he dies. You got Captain Ferris, who's just an entire asshole the entire time. He's a basic military lapdog. You got the robots. They got probably more personality than, Captain Ferris did. And the warden. Which I don't know why, but I keep seeing the warden as Lance Riddick. It's just probably the way he was portrayed and how Lance Riddick portrays himself in a lot of movies and content. He's very stoic. He's very down-to-earth, realistic, mastermind type. And then you have Danny, who kind of doesn't have this personality other than, I'm pissed off all the time because you fucked over Europa and killed my little sister. And there's not much more depth to that. That's all there is. So, in my opinion, this game is awful. I expected so much more from the teams that worked on Dead Space 2, some that worked on Dead Space 3 even. And I expected Glenn Schofield and his team to actually cohesively tell a good story and make it fluid and have like a bunch of characters that have good emotions and good horror. And all I got was Remnants of the Ashes, fucked Surge. They combined their mechanics, and then it's just basically a retelling of Dead Space 3 if Glenn Schofield actually worked on it and tried to flesh it out instead of letting EA dictate everything. And I almost feel bad saying this, but maybe EA was right for once. Maybe EA should have canceled Visceral. Maybe the whole bad part of Dead Space 3 wasn't EA's time crunches and over managerial positions on this whole project, but maybe if Glenn Schofield made this, imagine how much worse Dead Space 3 would have been, even in its awful state that Dead Space 3 is in. Not including the microtransactions on that, but just this. This is what somebody has been working on since 10 years ago when they started founding the company they work for. The I'm just really disappointed, honestly. This game was frustrating start to end. I was hooked for a little bit. Granted, I was hopeful for most of it. I was like, it's got to get better. It's Glenn Schofield. It's this game. This game's been hyped up. It's the new spiritual successor to Dead Space. One of the best horror games ever made, ever conceived. It immersed you. It made you scared. When I played Dead Space 1, was pissing my pants the entire time. I was one of those cringy kids who had to turn the sound down in the music because I was piss off scared of Dead Space 1. I was immersed into Dead Space 1 significantly, and even Dead Space 2, I was scared. I was frightened. I was blasting fucking The Diary of Jane by Breaking Benjamin on repeat so much that anytime that I heard it, I got flashbacks to Dead Space 1 about how fucking terrifying it was because I gave myself the fucking Schrodinger bullshit. Or the Pavlov bullshit. Or, you know, fucking ringing the bell. I hear that shit. I'm like instantly thinking of all the crazy shit that happened in Dead Space 1. The first time that you're aboard the deck and the weird rhinoceros necromorph comes out and attacks you. The time you're on the mining cart and your girlfriend's walking beside you, even though she's not fucking real, she's just walking beside you. And it's just going off, and then all the necromorphs start attacking. You gotta protect her, because if you don't protect her, she's gonna die, but there was nobody ever there. The times that the Regenerator were chasing me, the time that I actually met the time that I actually met the Regenerator, fucking frightening. I couldn't kill it. You couldn't kill it. There was nothing to do. What were you supposed to do? You just had to keep running. You had to run, and that's all you could do. But here, in this game, you can't run. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to vault. How many times I've tried to move enemies. How many times I've got hit with artificial difficulty of enemies just bashing me. I'm trying to dodge and weave, but they're playing like actual enemies, which is good, but it's bad in a video game sense. In a video game sense, I should be able to dodge and weave attacks without getting hit by another enemy. And if I can't do that, I should have the option to run. But within the first 30 minutes of the game, when you just have that steel pipe, right? I get hit by 4 enemies. I'm dodging, weaving, hitting them, killing them as I can. But you dodge one, and the other hits you. And you get hit with terrible enemy placement like that a couple other times throughout the game, where you can't do anything. At least not until you get your grip. And even then, sometimes your grip isn't powerful enough to stop 10, 15, 20 enemies coming at you. And one part in particular that was also significant artificial difficulty that had no reason to be there was this part towards the end. You're going past this metal railing, and then all of a sudden it crumbles, and then the enemies instantly know that you're there. Like you are the one that caused that, and not that sound caused that. It would have been better if like they got up close to my face, but they didn't know that I was actually there, and they just heard the sound, and more came off the walls coming to investigate the sound, and I had to try and sneak past or something like that. There was never an actual tense horror moment. There were a lot of tense action moments, and the game really failed to bring me in. And the story itself and the people and the characters, the acting, it wasn't strong enough to bring me in. And I really felt disappointed by how much hype this game had, solely because Glenn Schofield helped make one of the most memorable and probably best horror games ever. And that's why I'm sad to say that I would never recommend this game to anybody. I think he needs to hit the drawing board again. I think he didn't understand what made Dead Space the game that it was. I'm gonna have to give this game like a 3 out of 10. And the 3 honestly comes from how many letters there are in grip, because that's the only time I had fun with this game was using the grip gauntlet. And honestly, I think he would have made a significantly better game if he just focused on the mechanics of the grip and made a game around the grip than making a rehashed Dead Space 3. And I'd like to know what your guys' opinions are on, you know, if you've played the game, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. I'd love to hear what you felt, because I I can't say anything good about this game. I really can't. And I really, really wanted this game to be good. And all I have is heartbreak and disappointment. So thank you guys for listening. And if you guys are interested in my playthrough on Medium, there's a VOD of it. There's 2 parts. Both are about 4.5 hours each. And I hope you guys take care. Stay awesome out there, guys.